Welcome to Navy Paints, and in this video I'll be showing you how I turn some cheap dollar store boxes shaped like containers into nice terrain for 40k on Necromunda. Let's crack in. The first thing I did to these containers was cut off the hinges. Next I just super glued down the lids, and I filled in the gaps with some Tamiya epoxy putty. As the crates were too pristine, to weather those up, I used various tools including a stone from my garden, scratching, cutting and chipping away at the plastic just to give them a more weathered effect. Before painting the models, I've given them a coat of Vallejo's Hobby Spray White. With the undercoat down, now I've gone over to Rough Iron from the Army Painter. I've applied this through my airbrush. Also in the brush, I've put a few drops of Vallejo's Flow Improver. I applied this paint until all three containers had a nice even coverage. These next two colours are both from the Army Painter. This is True Copper and GunMetal. With both these colours, I've just sprayed random parts of the containers, just spraying a spot here and there to break up the rough iron. The reason why I went with the three metallics is just when I use the chipping effect later, when I remove the paint, this will give me different colours of metals underneath and try to represent different depths of scratches and weathering. It didn't really turn out the way I imagined. It's not really noticeable, so you can skip this if you want. It won't make a big difference. It was very interesting after trying it just to see what the results were. This next step, I'll run some chipping medium from Vallejo through the airbrush. With the chipping medium, I haven't mixed in any flow improver. With this medium, I've sprayed it thin in some areas and quite thick in others. The reason why I've done this is with the thin areas, the paint won't react straight away until I use the paintbrush to remove the paint. With the thicker areas, it'll start to pool, and once I apply the paint over the top, it'll start to crack and give the paint a nice natural effect of weathering and cracking. Once I applied the amount of chipping medium I wanted, I let that dry thoroughly for about an hour. With the chipping medium dry, I've given each container a different base coat. The three colours are Model Air White from Vallejo, Golden Yellow from Vallejo, and Ultramarine Blue from the Army Painter. This first one here is Model Air White from Vallejo. For the yellow and the blue, I mixed in a little bit of flow improver. For the Model Air White, I just went straight from the pot with that colour. The second one here is Golden Yellow Game Colour from Vallejo. And this third colour here is the Army Painter's Ultramarine Blue. With those paints now dry, you can already see where I've applied the chipping medium quite heavily, as you've got natural cracking on all the different crates in different areas. You can leave the crates here, they look pretty good, but I thought they were a bit boring and needed more work. So I've used the 40k rulebook. I've gone through and found myself an Imperial Guard symbol. I just traced that onto a piece of paper and carefully cut it out with a Stanley knife. And just making sure it's positioned on the middle of each crate. Using my airbrush and some matte black from the Army Painter, I just sprayed this symbol quickly onto each crate, not worrying if it wasn't too perfect, as I'm going to fix it up with a lot of weathering later. For the details of the skull and the wings, I've just painted in some quick teeth, some eyes and a nose, and just tied up the skull and the wings a little bit better. This is simply using the same paint as the crate, so for this one here, this is the Model Air White from Vallejo. To begin the weathering process, we need to reactivate the chipping medium underneath the paint. I've just used an old toothbrush here, put it in some water and just lightly rub this over the entire crate. I start with the toothbrush, just working it in circles, just trying to reactivate all the paint, loosening it up a little bit. Then I come in with a short bristled old paintbrush and work this in a little bit harder, starting to remove all the paint and chips where I want. I had a lot more control where I wanted to remove the paint from using a smaller paintbrush. With this technique, I just worked my way around all the crates, removing bits of paint, flakes, and chipping them up. For the hinges and bars on the containers, I've gone with Leadbelcher from Citadel. This is painted straight from the pot. I've applied this with 2 thin coats just to make sure I had good coverage on each of the bars. Once I was done with one, I just moved on to the next container. With the Leadbelcher down, now I've gone over to Vallejo's model wash. This is oiled earth, and I've simply given all the bars a coat with this wash. Applying this wash will darken down the silver and give the hinges and bars a nice weathered look. This next paint is from Vallejo's Enviromental line. This is Rust Texture. Applying this paint is really easy. I simply put a little bit onto my brush, dot it onto the area of the model where the paint is chipped, and with my finger I just pull it down towards the bottom of the container, leaving a nice streaking effect, like rain has weathered and damaged the container over time. And I repeat this process for all the sides of the container. With this texture paint, I applied to some areas multiple times. Doing this will darken up certain areas more than others, giving the rust on the crates a little bit more randomness. For the roof of the container, I apply the paint in the same way, but instead of streaking it down, I run my finger from side to side or in a circular motion just to spread out the rust. This next colour here is another environmental paint from Vallejo. This is the Rainmarks. It's applied the same way as I did the rust texture, but instead of doing it over the entire crate, I've just done it from the top of the crate streaking down. Also, I've placed it at the bottom rim of the crates, but instead of streaking it down, I've just let it pull up like water's gathering. And on the top of the crates, I've just painted it again into all the cracks and crevices, just letting it look like it's been pulled up. With the Rainmarks dry, now I've gone back to the oiled earth from Vallejo. When applying this paint, I've randomised the amount, so sometimes adding a lot of water to the paint to thin it down, sometimes adding it straight from the pot. This will give me darker patches and lighter patches around the container, randomising it up. And I'm just running this paint into all the cracks and crevices of the container, and making the finish for the containers look a lot more natural. The last colour I applied to the containers is Nihilakh Oxide from Citadel. Like the rest of the colours, I just apply this paint where I want it. If it's too heavy, I just remove it with my finger and just reapply if I remove too much. Just going back and forward until I was happy. And the last thing I do to the containers is using again the Nihilakh Oxide. I just paint a line using the Nihilakh Oxide under all the hinges. This will represent the rust running over time. I don't apply this paint in a uniform pattern. Some areas I'll put 2 or 3 streaks, other areas I'll just put 1 or 2, just to mix up the effect of the colour. And here they are in all their rusty glory. Thanks for watching Nephew Paints. If you liked the video, please click the sub button or leave me a like. If there's anything you'd like to see in a future video, please leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one. Catch ya.